Good afternoon and welcome to Mr. Bowie's AP European History class. The Age of Religious Wars and European Expansion. We'll be dealing with Chapter 15, Sections 2 and 3 today, talking about overseas exploration and conquest. We're using the McKay, Hill, and Buckler text, 7th edition, and let's get started. Overseas exploration and conquest. The first voyage to North America is credited to the Vikings, and that would be somewhere between the 900s and 1000 Common Era. And the Vikings are given credit with this exploration and with even creating settlements as far as Iceland and exploring what would today be northern Canada and northern U.S. They did land there. They didn't necessarily set up colonies there, and the Vikings were not into conquest per se. They set up scattered colonies. People at this time were also fearful of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire is what will become Turkey, and they're fearful of that presence in the east. But it is not until we get to the mid 1300s that people are looking outward, and people in Portugal were in the best possible geographic position to do so. They're the first to expand their territory, and being on the far southwestern border of Europe with the Atlantic Ocean, and having access to the Mediterranean Sea, they were in a perfect position. Most notably, we have to give credit to Prince Henry the Navigator. He is responsible for creating a navigation school and looking at solving many of the problems that had been plaguing sailors since the times of the Greeks and Romans. He sought to make Portugal far superior to others, and for a time being, he was extremely successful in doing so. Portuguese control. Early Portuguese explorers included Bartholomew Diaz, who's the first to round the Cape of Good Hope, even though he had to turn back. Vasco da Gama, who reaches India and returns with spices and cloth, and this sets off a firestorm of motivation towards exploration in the east. And then Pedro Cabral and Diaz set up trading posts in India. In 1500, the coast of Brazil is claimed by the Portuguese, and Portugal becomes the entrance port to Europe for Asian goods. And this would be the golden century for Portugal. We don't talk about Portugal a lot after this, and Portugal and Spain in succession here will have their high times, specifically due to their ability to capture the seas. The big roadblock or obstacle for the Portuguese are the Muslim traders, and they've controlled the Asian ports for quite a long time. They've controlled trade going through North Africa, and the Portuguese see this as a big roadblock. The person given credit for kind of breaking through, literally and figuratively, is Alfonso de Albuquerque, who employs the use of cannons on Muslim ports in India and is able to overtake them, giving Portugal a great insight into trade. Technological advances. We've already mentioned the cannon, which was extremely important and was for the most part distinctly European and a European advantage. The caravel, a three-masted sailing ship, very maneuverable. It did not have an open galley, meaning that it wasn't going to sink easily in the high seas in hostile waters, and it was much more maneuverable. And this allowed the Portuguese to head southward and to get around Africa. The magnetic compass was also created and enabled sailors to determine direction, and the astrolabe, which permitted sailors to plot latitude. And the most significant part about the astrolabe is that it improved map accuracy immensely. Maps, just like sailing technology, had been pretty stagnant, and there was a lot of misgiving about the shape of the world. We still didn't know at this time whether the world was round or not. Explorers' motives, and I sum this up, although it's pretty simplistic, as God, gold, and glory, the three G's. But really, when you try and break down all of the motives that go into exploration, the underlying is the gold, representing all material profit. And in many cases, for the Spanish, that consisted of a large amount of silver as well as gold, but an extremely precious metal at the time, almost equal in value. There were, however, many, many people that were motivated, including Christopher Columbus, including Queen Isabella, including others that would follow in Christianizing Muslims and pagans and spreading Christianity throughout the world. And then the glory aspect of it. There were limited opportunities for upper class men in Spain at this time. The aristocracy kind of held the quota on most decent jobs and most land and money. The idea of Renaissance curiosity, okay, was also a major motivating factor. And these were things where men sought out to find glory. And then your text also mentions the spice trade, which is incredibly valuable. European food at this point was extremely bland. And the spice trade opened up a whole new world and a whole new market. And it was very, very valuable. We might not think of that today as being very valuable, but it was of significant value during this period of time. Christopher Columbus. Your text dedicates a section to him, and it's kind of a sticky subject. Until recently, he was viewed as a great hero. And as we've dove more into his life, we realize that we're probably glorifying a man that enslaved and killed many natives, did not really discover a new continent, and had a somewhat tumultuous history in a lot of ways. And there are a lot of questions about what his legacy really should be. And the bottom line is this. He was successful at navigating the Atlantic Ocean more than once. He has a grave influence on natives because he paved the way for Spanish imperial administration in Central and South America. And we could almost see that he's maybe somewhat of a fool because he never realizes until the day he dies. He'll go to his grave not realizing that he didn't discover Asia. That he discovered, quote unquote, the New World, which obviously isn't the New World, but it's because it's been inhabited by Native Americans for a very, very long time. Later explorers. Native populations were destroyed and decimated by the Spanish in the Americas, and this is an unfortunate event. Most of that destruction is caused by smallpox and other communicable diseases that most Europeans had built up some immunity to, and natives had no way of fighting off. Your book gives many examples of very large and vast civilizations being decimated to hundreds because of this carrying of disease. Some of the later explorers that are discussed, Amerigo Vespucci, who is the namesake of the Americas and coins the phrase essentially New World, although that is somewhat of a controversial phrase, obviously, because we now know that that world was inhabited by hundreds of thousands of Native Americans in both North, Central, and South America prior to any discovery. Ferdinand Magellan, who is extremely important because he finally proves that the Earth is round by circumnavigating the globe. Unfortunately, Magellan is not on the ship as it returns. He has died before it gets done, but he is the driving force behind that expedition. Cortez should be connected with conquering the Aztecs, Pizarro with conquering the Incas, and modern-day Peru and Chile is where the richest silver mines in the world were, which brings in all of that American bullion to Spain. And then finally, this part of your text talks about how even though Lisbon, uh, Portugal, and various port cities in Spain were where most of these explorers were launching from, the financial center stayed in the Netherlands. And Antwerp and then Amsterdam in succession are the financial centers, the epicenter of European finances. And it's here where the Dutch East and Dutch West India companies get their start and really put the Netherlands, really put the Dutch on the map as far as exploration and as far as control of a lot of the global circulation of goods and the global economy. Economic effects of Spain's discoveries. One would think at first glance that even though this is the golden century of Spain, literally and figuratively, and the golden century of Portugal, that this would have had a positive effect on Spain. However, ultimately, this leads to the demise of Spain as a superpower, a global superpower. And initially, people blame the influx of this American bullion, much like we would blame if we printed way too much money. However, most scholars believe now that it was a steady population growth. And you have this steady population growth, and that is a primary cause of inflation because there is a sharp rise in the demand for food and goods, and the government is not able to respond, whether that be by producing more food and goods or by raising taxes to keep up with this price revolution. And a lot of that dates back to the Reconquista and the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, who were very good farmers and business people, and that really hurting the infrastructure of Spain and not allowing them to maybe deal with this as well as they could. We'll never know, but many scholars prognosticate that was a major hindrance. This impacted all of Europe. Prices sometimes more than doubled, and wages could not keep pace. And obviously, the peasantry, the poor, lower classes of society, suffered the most. How did Spain and Portugal control all of these far-off lands that they had captured? And the answer is put very directly in this last portion of Section 4, that, excuse me, Section 3, Spain created 4 viceroyalties, or administrative divisions. They used audiencia, or a board of judges, and intendants, or who were people with broad military and administrative power that reported directly back to Spain. And both Spain and Portugal prescribed to mercantilism, which is going to continue on the rise as Europe begins to colonize many other parts of the globe. And mercantilism has a great impact on Europe and a devastating impact on those places where they have captured colonies. And that is the belief that colonies exist for the benefit of the controlling country. And they discouraged any native industries from developing. And in Spain specifically, they collected quinto, or 1/5 of all the precious metals. They went directly to Spain, no questions asked. Portugal runs a very similar mercantilist system. They are joined with Spain in 1580. They call their officials the corregidores, and those were their local officials. And this set up the administration for years to come in Central and South America.